Good evening, everyone. Today is Monday, June 12th, 2012. Welcome to Elmhurst City Hall. If you could all please rise for Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And to make this committee of the whole meeting official, I would ask Clerk Spencer to call the roll, please.
Pezza.
Here.
Gutenkopf. Here. Leader.
Here.
Dunn.
Here.
Graham.
Here.
Polumsky.
Here.
York.
Here.
Hipskin. Absent. Healy.
Here.
Levin.
Here.
Kennedy. Absent. Morley.
Here.
Wagner.
Here.
Mulliner.
Here.
12 present, 2 absent.
12 present, 2 absent. We have a quorum. And today's Committee of the Whole is regarding Hahn Street, which is the second item on the agenda. And before I hand it off to the Cross Group here, I would just like to give a brief introduction. Hahn Street development was a development that has been underway for several years. Was an acquisition of land by the city of Elmhurst to redevelop the entire block area of Hahn Street. Was originally a planned use to have retail on the first floor with condos up. And with the market correction that we've seen over the last few years, we realized that condos are no longer a viable option in today's market as far as financing and marketability, et cetera. And we have retained an expert, actually from the private side. This gentleman is a go-to guy for landowners, for municipalities, for developers, for property owners, et cetera, that are looking to see what is the highest and best use for today's market and what will also fit into our comprehensive plan that we have for downtown Elmhurst. So many of us have struggled with this project. We also want to make sure it gets built and is financially viable. We want to make sure it fits our downtown. Originally had a retail component. I think many of us would like to keep that, but there's questions of what's going to happen upstairs. Is the component upstairs going to be potentially office space, or is it going to be potentially upscale rentals? And these are things that we are looking to this consultant for advice. And with that, Tracy Cross and Associates, Mr. Cross and Holly Eganey, did I say that right? Are here tonight to explain their analysis, and I know they've been meeting with many of the business owners in downtown Elmhurst here, including Willis Johnson and Frank Catalano and Mr. Sabatino, who's on our Economic Development Commission, to talk about, what's the marketplace like in Elmhurst, Illinois. And with that, I hand it off to you, Mr. Cross, and Holly.
Yeah, we'll see if we can. This is actually what we would call a stakeholder meeting, so we're very open to solicit your responses in a way of what you'd like to see. A lot of times what you like to see is defined in planning terms as a vision. We're a little bit more practical and a little bit more feet on the ground, and we define vision as what's marketable and meets with the comprehensive goals of individual cities, municipalities, or in some cases, a developer themselves. I've been doing this for 40 some odd years, so market analysis throughout the country, and we look at all forms of mixed use environments in many cities. Holly and I were just back from Dallas, Texas, and Boston market. To give you an idea of a shock value of the Boston market, our pro forma rents down in Back Bay in Boston were $5.25 a foot for rent. So it's a different world when you get back to Chicago. But what we'd like to do is to solicit responses from all of the aldermen of, to what their ideas of what not to do. There may be biases by some of you against apartments. There may be biases, well, we'll just wait for market recovery and the condominium market will come back with resurgence, and I would like to hear those opinions. So we're kind of turning it to to you. We're in the initial process of our work involvement in terms of gathering all the secondary data, comping everything in the residential marketplace that needs to be comped, so that we can present our findings in a way that is substantiated by empirical evidence that's found directly in the marketplace. To give you some idea, we audit on a quarterly basis every single residential community throughout the Chicago metropolitan area, including anything new in the for sale sector and all the apartments that were built in 1985 or later throughout the entire metropolitan area. So just to give you some idea of the Chicago residential marketplace overall, from peak to trough right now, we're down 92%. And it is universal in terms of the for sale sector. The overall market in the country is down about 75 to 76%. So just to give you some idea that we're kind of in the muck of the world relative to residential for sale product and new construction. But we'll go through that in rather strong detail. Holly, do you want to? In our report, we'll detail exactly what's happening and sort of give you an idea of when market recovery is likely and what shape and form it will take.
One of the things that this so everybody can hear.
I think you need to move it closer.
Yeah,
You need to
can't
speak
hear.
right into it.
Okay. One of the things that we would like to know is you all had sort of a mini agenda distributed to you is what have you seen either regionally here in the Chicago area or elsewhere in your travels that you would really like to see happen in the Hahn Street property that you feel would complement what you already have at City Center. It's helpful to have an understanding of what your expectations are, what you define as an environment that works as opposed to an environment that maybe just doesn't have the feel that you think that Elmhurst would have. Anyone want to, for example, you might look at downtown LaGrange and say, okay, what I really like about what's happening in downtown LaGrange, the area south of the tracks is their main core, city core, but then they have that newer development area on the north side of the Metro tracks. And, this works, this doesn't work. I'd like to see something that's closer to downtown Oak Park. I mean, we're looking for feedback on the visuals of what you either really would like to see or what you really don't like about certain areas.
And Holly, this is specific to the Hahn Street development,
Specific to Hahn
we're not
Street,
talking about the
not
rest of the
to
downtown.
downtown Elmhurst. But what we want to do is, all of the feedback that we're taking here today, we will maintain our objectivity, but we want to make sure that we specifically address concerns of you all as the board, because at the end of the day, you're going to be marketing this property, you're going to be inviting a new set of residents that are going to become very active in your community, and we want to make sure that the area has the vibrancy that the city center does, that you're looking for, that you'll be able to successfully work with developers to make it happen.
Very good. Alderman Mulliner?
Yeah, I guess I'll just jump in here. I'm back to, the idea of a mixed use, of course, because we'd like to ideally keep some retail on the first floor. However, I'm also looking, in my mind, for something that's going to create a captive audience for our downtown businesses. I think it's important for us to identify some type of a facility, whether it's rental, whether it's a hotel, whether it's apartments, whether it's condos, townhouses, whatever we can do on those upper floors to create that captive audience so that people, when they come into the downtown area, will stay there, they'll eat there, they'll go to the stores and shop in downtown, which of course will help our tax base. One of the things that there's been a little bit more talk about lately is the concept of maybe like a small boutique type hotel, keeping in mind that when you look at that, we've got the college that's sitting here, our proximity to the railroad tracks, our proximity to the airport. People can come in here when they're staying overnight. They can go to the restaurants that are downtown. So, maybe something on that order. Maybe we look toward the rental. Maybe we look to some toward a type of a mix. But I'm looking for something that creates that type of an environment. I'm looking for that captive audience so that we get more sales in downtown.
Alderman Levin.
I'd expand on that a little bit. I think that if we had something that had such that had enough of a draw to link the far north end of our downtown, which is North Avenue, with where most of the activity is, which is probably, in this area right here in South, so that people would feel like there's a continuum of our downtown, that it's not, a few disparate stores, and then the real downtown, as it's perceived, would be further south. I would see it as something that's more, I don't see anything with a very obtuse design that's not going to fit in, something that's more classically, brick look, and LaGrange is one area that has done a good job in terms of getting a feel like the downtown area goes all together, mixing the old use with the new use, and something that will create a high level of pedestrian traffic along those blocks.
Alderman Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, I want to thank, City Manager Grabowski for having a committee of the whole meeting. I think this is beneficial to all of the members of the council as well as the public. Thank you also for the consultants for being here. I think a few things I want to throw out there, and I want to tail off of what Alderman Mulliner and Alderman Levin has just stated. And Alderman Leader actually made the comment when we talked about it probably about 4 or 5 years ago in regards to this development. I think that this development has the potential of being a destination, an attraction off of North Avenue. I think Alderman Leader referenced it as a spider web, if you would, to attract people coming or driving along North Avenue. Some of the ideas that have already been thrown out are good ones in regards to like a boutique type hotel. I've heard some of my residents talk about that, as well as a bed and breakfast type of business. I think it's essential that we work into the equation parking. There's no doubt about that. Retail, we have to have some type of retail, possibly some type of entertainment in the space. I'm just throwing out a blanket of ideas. I know that all of these can't be encompassed under the sun in this piece of parcel. The other thing that hasn't been discussed is business condos might be something that could work into this development. You talked about different locations that we think are good or that we like regionally. I like Downers Grove's downtown. LaGrange also is a nice downtown. Both of them seem to be a little bit more expansive than the Elmhurst downtown and has a good variety of mixture. I see a lot of foot traffic, and I think foot traffic is definitely essential. The one thing I want to comment, other than some of the things I threw out there, to summarize, is really we need to make sure that this is a big draw. But I'm a little bit concerned in regards to our agenda and some of the comments that have been previously made already. I'm not objecting to more upscale or higher level apartments, but it seems like our agenda is already steering us in that direction as an idea. I personally am going to ignore that agenda item of, what do I feel about apartment rentals, because I think that's only one option out of many. I think it is an option, and I'm not, pushing it aside, but to spotlight that on the agenda, I find kind of odd and, in a way, inappropriate, to be honest with you. I'm looking forward to hearing other comments of my fellow aldermen and getting continued feedback from the public on this, because this is a long time coming. But whatever happens is that we definitely need something that draws more people to downtown and does fit in with what we have today. I don't want some contemporary structure that doesn't fit in with, you know, the rest of the structures around it. So I think that's key as well.
Very good. Alderman Palumski.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would agree with a lot of what has been said up here, and I'd like to think that if the move is to go with apartments, that they're designed in a way that could be flexible and eventually become condo if the market allows for that. But I agree with a lot of what's been said. If it could be a draw, that would be ideal. Continue our downtown and find that captive tax base. So that'd be great. Thank you.
Very good. Yes, Mr. Cross?
I get to ask questions now.
Sure.
Okay, a couple of them, because I have to have a full understanding of this. And the reason apartments were put in there as, and if you read it carefully, one viable option may be, okay? Let me just give a 1-second speech. There are 297 political jurisdictions in the Chicago metropolitan area. Up until recently, only 12 would approve apartments. So the reason it's there is to make sure that we understand, you know, your thoughts and your feelings about apartments, because if that's going to get turned down, and I know that Morningside and that you had that as an option, and then you mentioned that they have to be converted at some point in time, or could be converted at one point in time, which leads to the question, are you now against studio or one-bedroom apartments?
Me personally, I wouldn't say so, but if there are studio or one bedroom, to at least have something that's a little bit more marketable, more desirable in the condo market, 2-bedroom, 1.5 bath, something more like that, if just to allow for flexibility as the market changes.
All right. Down again.
Alderman Healy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Along those lines on apartments, I personally I'm not opposed to them. I don't have a problem with them. And Alderman Palumski, and then you mentioned it as well, if apartments are hot right now, and 10 years from now, the market shifts, 5 years from now, the landowners that own the apartments will find a way to turn those to condos. We've seen that over the course of history, recent history, where, you know, 8 flats that were apartment buildings turned into condo complexes. We see hotels that couldn't fill up turn into condos. I'm very confident that the people who eventually own these things, if this is the direction that we go, and I tend to agree with Alderman Mullen, I want to bring a captive audience into that development. So I'd like to see residents there one way or the other, because apartment dwellers one day might be condo dwellers the next, might be apartment dwellers again in 15 years. So I'm not going to get too tied up with what are we doing right now, because eventually it's going to change. And then as far as what I'd like to see there, I'd like to see a go-kart track.
Vertical, though.
Yeah.
With a loop.
With a loop.
That's on the rooftop you went there.
Which brings up, what do you not want there outside of the extreme of a go-kart track and some other things I can think of, but I won't mention them publicly? What doesn't go there that you feel might be acceptable someplace else, but you just don't want to see there? Go ahead.
Alderman Pezza.
Thank you, Mayor. First, I'd like to start by saying that myself and Alderman Gutenkopf are the 2 aldermen that represent the ward in which this parcel sits, so we have probably a little bit extra above and beyond interest in this particular development. They are our constituents, especially the residents directly to the west of the development. We are very fortunate here in Elmhurst to have the thriving community we have, filled with a unique mixture of great schools, access to commuter transportation, cultural venues, which is unique to towns of our size, museums, a symphony, We've got the college, walking distance to this parcel. We have a vibrant downtown, especially given the current economy. I think we're doing very well. Our residential real estate market actually is not in a muck in comparison to the rest of the country. Elmhurst is doing very well in sales and especially in new construction. If you drive around the town or if you ask how many permits we've issued, Elmhurst is up there. We're doing very well. It's a very sought-after community given the circumstances of the economy. I think that's important to keep in mind. I don't think we should totally relate ourselves to other communities in the country that are really hurting, because we're doing okay. We're doing well. We have a fabulous central location here in town, easy access to highways, close to downtown Chicago, close to O'Hare Airport, quick jog to surrounding communities and big malls. This is not only a prime piece of commercial real estate, but it's one of our last prime pieces in our downtown, and I think that's the most important part of this development to keep in mind. I really don't want to see another like humdrum, run-of-the-mill, yesterday's mixed-use development with first-floor retails and condos above. I think that is a thing of the past, and they're pretty much a dime a dozen right now, and the condo market, although the single-family is very well and the townhomes are selling well, right now the condos aren't really going that well. So I agree with the concept that the condos are not a very sought-after item. I actually don't believe Elmhurst should or needs to emulate any other community. I think we have our own unique identity, and when people refer to Elmhurst, especially our downtown, the buzzwords I hear are charming, attractive, quaint, inviting. So I think we need to keep that in mind when we focus on what should be there. I don't want to lose that identity. I think that's what keeps us attractive, what keeps our real estate market hopping, what keeps businesses coming here. Once we lose that, we then become anywhere USA, and I don't think we can afford or want to do that. We have a rare opportunity here to take a second bite at this apple, which I think we're very fortunate that something wasn't built and left halfway bankrupt, and now what are we going to do with this halfway built building? So I think we lucked out a little bit, or a lot, in that avenue. This needs to be developed, obviously, to its best use, but it also needs to maximize the revenue that the city gets off of this development. I think one of the problems with an apartment building is the only people the revenue is maximized for at the time it's apartments is the landlord. And I don't imagine the city's going to be the landlord of an apartment building. That's my concern with apartments on this prime commercial piece. I think we need to ask ourselves what is actually missing in our downtown. What don't we have? One thing I do hear over and over, and I've heard it here tonight, is this boutique hotel component. I can envision a really unique, attractive boutique hotel, perhaps with a restaurant on the first floor and something that we could utilize also as maybe a small convention-type venue, given the proximity to the airport, something that could maybe be utilized as a banquet facility, jazz or piano bar, to start getting into details. I mean, I think we need to really think outside the box. What will make this, and I think Elmhurst has the potential to be a destination location. We hear of staycations, and I think staycations are here to stay for a while. So I would like to see us be a destination location. And the college just steps away. People come to visit their kids. Where do they stay? Right now, you have to send them on the outskirts of town, which is where the hotels are. And what does that do? That makes them get in their car and drive to Oak Brook or another community, either west of here or south of here, and patronize those businesses. I think if we had a quaint hotel here, what would they do? They wouldn't even have to drive. They could walk, shop in our stores, eat in our restaurants, still be close to family. So I think, given those reasons, I could see where it would be a benefit. Hotel tax is also a great source of revenue for the city. I think on the Addison Street side, perhaps if it were some type of hotel with all this other stuff going on, that would have to be on the York side, perhaps just as a component, but on Addison, I could see like a row house type, town square feel, townhomes, that would be a buffer and also complement the other townhomes on that block. I think this would give us an edge over some of our competing communities. I know right now, a lot of the larger hotels are looking to get into the boutique business. They are looking for communities in which they can expand, but do a boutique size hotel. I think if apartments were to go in Elmhurst, if there was a need, I personally think the perfect place for them would be, we have a parcel on Addison Street, just steps to our train station, which I've heard probably will be developed. And it butts smack up to single-family residents. So I'm thinking if there was to be an apartment building, perhaps that would be a prime location for something like that, because it's residential against residential. I think that covered all my notes.
Thank you,
So,
Alderman.
Thank you.
Alderman Gutenkopf.
Thank you. I echo so much of what Alderman Pezza is thinking. I like the way she's outlined it and thinking about adjacencies, because I think that's critically important in this downtown area. I can think of a couple of examples of places that have done this, that the boutique hotel has been instrumental in sparking other development. And Beloit, Wisconsin is a key community. The Beloit Inn was put up, I don't know, 10 or 15 years ago. And this is adjacent to a college in a very similar situation in a downtown that wasn't thriving so much, but is really coming back. So I think as a model, that is a place that comes to my mind when I think about how can a boutique hotel be a component of this mix. I think there are boutique hotel options in bigger cities that don't quite parallel ours, but seem to be the right opportunity for today. I can think of towns that I don't want to look like, and I'm mostly responding to massing of heavy structures in these communities. And the two that really spring to mind are Arlington Heights and Evanston, both of which have greatly increased density in their downtowns, which is always a great driver for public transit and for walkability, but I don't like the way they've come across in these communities. It's almost as if they hit the we want to drive density without the we want to also retain some semblance of what our town is all about. And my understanding of Evanston is that they're really struggling to fill a lot of these properties. I don't want to end up in a position where we overdo it for our community. When the one giant tower condo building in Elmhurst was built, I don't know, 20 years ago now, over 20 years ago, the community reacted pretty negatively to this, and we've never built that big again. I still think there's an awful lot of sentiment in this town that a giant mass building in that spot would be completely out of place. Park Ridge has something similar as well, not right off of Toohey and Northwest Highway. And it's an attractive enough building and it just looks completely out of place. And I don't want to see that happen here either. So I think those are my biggest concerns, is how does it fit in with the surrounding community? What's it going to look like? How is it going to speak to the buildings around it, which are more modest in scale? And how does that then make us think about future development? Are we really thinking that this is a trend in downtown? What's that do to all these other adjacencies? Those are my biggest concerns.
I'll throw my 2 cents in real quick, too. Oak Park has got a mixed-use building, and it's downtown, right off Harlem Avenue. It's got a Trader Joe's on the first floor with multi-unit upstairs, and our former executive director for Elmer City Center, Pat Zubek, who now is the executive director for Downtown Oak Park, I had called her, I said, Pat, that's a great facility, and condos, she goes, no, they're actually upscale rentals. And I was like, really? I go, how's the quality of tenant? She's like, they're younger, these younger tenants are typically wanting to rent, they have expendable money, and they frequent the retailers. So in Oak Park, that seems to be working out well, and I know destination retailers are something that many of us have been really pushing for. When I heard even comments from all the aldermen, it seemed like they have that kind of a stem on the first floor. We want something that's really gonna, I think, ring the bell for Elmhurst, and we've got the location, we've got the central porthole with all the highways around us, and just like Mariano's will be a focal point which will draw from towns as far as Bloomingdale and Hinsdale and Oak Brook and even into the Elmwood Park areas. I think this could be another opportunity for Elmhurst as well too. So it's been interesting to watch other communities like St. Charles and Oak Park adapt to the different markets that we're dealing with as well too. So I think while we can write our own script, because we are Elmhurst, it is nice to see what the other towns are succeeding with and what other towns have failed with too. So we don't end up we want to end up in a success position as always. So anybody else? Alderman Morley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd say downtown I like the best is Elmhurst, and I truly mean that. When I go to other downtowns, I pick and choose certain parts that I like. But I'll tell you this, what I really love about Elmhurst, and I don't think it's any secret, is that we have really the heartbeat of the downtown is our cinema, York Theater. It is an absolute draw, and it's what continues it's what continues the day life into the nightlife. And if you've had the opportunity, I'm fortunate enough to work in town, so I take every opportunity I can to drive through downtown. And it's a lot of hard work and a lot of planning that's happened over the last 20, 30 years. But that downtown is jammed almost on any given day. And a big chunk of it has to do with the previous planners of this city. A big chunk is York Theater. And that fountain area that we have downtown is just fantastic. So if I had, that's the thing that I like best. So I'm not sure if I'm entirely on board with a couple of different little commercial shops. If there's a way to clone York Theater, some sort of entity, a destination commercial entity that can bring in similar type of traffic, that's what I would be for in this space. I mean, the previous plans had a restaurant or a small retailer, and that's nice, but I don't see it extending the downtown. That would be ideal for me. I'm not entirely sold on this boutique hotel thing. That to me kind of sounds hit or miss, and if you miss, what are you left with? I'm very concerned about that. So I would say that some sort of anchor retailer. Ideally, if you can wave your magic wand and create a retailer who's going to come in and stay for 50 years, there's your assignment. The other part I would say is that I think it's a balance. I do see what Evanston has done. I think they got a little bit out of control. They went up much taller than they should. But in a mature town like Elmhurst with very, very limited real estate, we need to be thinking high density. I do think that there's a lot of positive aspects to high density. Certainly, we have fantastic transportation in this town, and to be 2 blocks away from Metra, among others, I think that offers a real opportunity to reduce automobile traffic, increase foot traffic. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Very good. Alderman Mulliner.
Yeah, I just want to hit on a couple of things that I think are really important. I think this has been great because we're getting some ideas from a lot of different people, and I think that's important. I think that some things that were said, and I just want to make sure that they're not missed, because they're important things that were said. I think Alderman Bram said one of them, and that is parking. Public parking is so critical in that area, and however it's put in, there needs to be public parking to accommodate that entire north end of the, if you will, the city center area, even though that's a little further out than what we would consider part of the city center. That is actually a very critical component of it. This should also be the focal point of the north end of Elmhurst, not to take anything away from CVS, but the reality is that we've got a fantastic focal point now on the south end of town with the hospital coming in. Now on the north end, we need to have something that draws people in. I agree with Alderman Morley that the theater is a huge draw for us, and I think that anything we can do that would help to bring more people into that area. This is a little further away. I think that the difficulty in trying to connect these two is just that. How do we connect these two and make it pedestrian friendly? Because you've got such a wider road up on the north part, and gets narrower in one way when you get down on New York Road, which makes it so it's easier for pedestrians to get around. So I think it's important for us to really look at a way to move pedestrians from one point to another easily. From that location, especially to the theater, to the downtown, and to the railroad tracks. A couple other things, just real simple things. Buffering. On the Addison side, I agree. If there's any way that we can do some type of buffering on the Addison side, I do believe that we've got to think seriously about the height of the buildings. I think density is going to be extremely important in this, but there's ways to do that in such a way that it doesn't give the appearance of it being that high. And that's usually done through setbacks. So we can step this thing back and maybe not necessarily right off of York Road have a wall of glass or a wall of brick, but do 1 or 2 stories and then step back and then bring it up a little bit higher. So I think there's some ways that, especially with the size of this piece of property, where we can do that higher density. And that's why I agree with Alderman Morley as well, as I think we need to look at that. It's just how do we do it so that it is less obvious to people, and that can be done architecturally. I'm not an architect, but I know it can be done because we've seen it done, and it's been done very effectively. So those are my comments.
Very good, Alderman Levin. Oop.
The idea of the density is not, downtown Evanston is a different world, but for our world, I think that's one way that you get that critical mass of people into an area is you have them live there. And so I'm not afraid of the density as long as I understand the concerns about how it's presented and done, but I do think creating some sort of density out at that location is what's going to help us provide a vehicle that's going to tie the far end of the north downtown to what's existing right now.
Alderman York.
There's been a lot of great ideas. It's been great just listening to this. I think one of the key things for me, and a couple people have hit on it tonight, is just kind of broadening the downtown area and making the north side of the central business district more attractive to get the pedestrians up and everything. And you know, when you listen and sit in on the city center meetings and things like that, people often discuss foot traffic. And I think by doing the right development here in Hahn Street, and I really like the mention of the fountain too. I mean, you go there during the day and there's just families flocked around there and kids flocked around there, and 95% of that is good. And I think if we could find something that we could kind of, bridge the gap between the central business district and Chipotle's and stuff down there to the CVS and the Paneras up here, and find something in the middle there that would draw people there, I think that's a win-win for the entire thing. And I think it'll rejuvenate, the north part of the central business district. So I like all the ideas. I like, the hotel district, the hotel option. I think that's good. One thing that, I think we need to be really cognizant of is not to place an undue burden on our school district, and not get to a point where there's 3 and 4 bedroom, and I'm just kind of throwing out some examples, but 3 and 4 bedroom apartments that would tend to, draw bigger families or multiple families to a situation like that would possibly put an undue burden on our school district. So I think that's got to be a critical element of our thought process as well. Thank you.
Well spoken. And Alderman Plumsky, and I'll go to Alderman Brand.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With the timing of this, there's the opportunity to look at the results of the city survey, or when they're collected. There's a question on there that asks residents why they're leaving town to spend money. So I think it might be important to look at that two ways. One, why are we leaving town? What are we looking for? And also, look at that the other way. What could we put here that would bring people from outside of town, and what would be a draw? So we have that to look at. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman. Before we go to Alderman Bram, Alderman Dunn hasn't spoken yet. Alderman Dunn, would you like to?
Yeah, just
Your
a
input?
couple of themes that
Sure.
I would like to throw out. I think I agree with Alderman Morley. I think we have a fantastic downtown. I would classify it maybe semi-upscale, but approachable. And I'd like to continue that theme to draw the interest from North Avenue, because, I'm assuming that's probably the most heavily traveled east-west thoroughfare that we have. And right now, I think 99% of the traffic just blows by that York and North intersection without paying much attention. So something eye-catching there. I like the idea of some type of fountain or a cascading waterfall. I was up in Wheeling last month with my folks, and we ate at Bob Chin's, and I asked our city manager, what should I take a look at up here? And he said, since he has some background up there in Wheeling, and he mentioned Milwaukee and Dundee. They have a very nice cascading waterfall fountain there, and I think that might be something on that corner that might draw some interest. I mentioned approachability. I'd like accessibility also. If you want to take the detour off of North Avenue, it can't be real cumbersome to do so. So we'd want to be user-friendly to those commuters that want to spend a little time in our town, but not take a lot of logistics to get there. Another theme, though, I identify with Elmhurst is family-oriented, and also with something that Alderman Morley said, something that creates some activity, but I really view this as a family-oriented town, and if we could just have the essence of semi-upscale, but family-oriented and approachable, I think those are some key characteristics I'd like to see in that property. Thanks.
Thank you, Alderman. Alderman Brown.
Thank you. Just a few other things that I want to stress, one of which might seem obvious to all 16 of us sitting up here and probably everybody in the audience, but one of your questions is what do you not want to see there? And this might even get a chuckle. No bank. Nothing that does not generate sales tax. This is something that I can't stress enough, that we need the revenue, the sales tax generating revenue at this location. And as Alderman Dunn just stated, something we don't have, something that's a destination, something that's a draw, and I just want to harp on that a little bit. The only other thing that I really wanted, or two other things that I wanted to add to this, was density versus parking. I don't want to have a development here that causes more issues with parking or more issues with downtown traffic. As Alderman Morley noted, as he travels through the downtown on a daily basis, which he might be part of that traffic problem. The traffic is one way, obviously, on York, excuse me, for part of York, and that does cause a little bit of an issue with our traffic. So we want to make sure that we're doing something that's smart overall, which to me would mean no business that would require, a drive-through. Nothing that's going to need, I don't know, semi-trailers bringing in different type of commodities for their business. We need to make sure we think about all those things. I know I might be getting ahead of ourselves a little bit. But some type of entertainment is something that I see would be a great draw for that. The other thing is density versus parking. I think right now the businesses we have there, CVS and Panera being two of them on the corner, there's overflow parking that already happens in this location that will eventually be develop. So we have to keep that in mind, that we're going to have to accommodate the current businesses. And finally, you mentioned in regards to studio apartments or, one-bedrooms, et cetera. Excuse me. I don't know, and even though I have my real estate license, I don't have the facts on if those are of high demand, especially in suburban Elmhurst. I would think that it would be more of a demand to see more of a two-bedroom type, and not to the scale of 3, 4-bedroom, which would possibly cause some issues with our school district as well. But my preference would be to see a 1, 2-bedroom variety compared to studio apartments or studio condos of that nature.
Thank you, Alderman. Alderman Pezza?
Thank you. Just a couple of follow-up items. Once again, I'm very glad we got to do this. I love hearing everyone's thoughts. Regarding the studio one-bedroom that you mentioned, how we feel about that, I think we need to be very careful because of its proximity to the college and because the college is really lacking in housing. It could turn into a dormitory. And I really don't think the residents surrounding would appreciate having a college dorm in their backyard. So I think we have to be very careful about that concept. And on the flip side of what Alderman York said, which I totally agree with because I've experienced, you get phone calls if there's a condo for sale. There are a lot of people, and I think this could happen with a studio or one-bedroom, that actually look to rent something small, inexpensive, just to use it as an address to use our school system. It's a known fact. It happens. I've received calls regarding that myself. So I think we have to be very, very careful about what we choose and how this all plays out. I think we need to keep the schools in mind. Definitely, that was an excellent point Alderman York brought up. So, and then, if we talk about missing the boat with other things, I think we also need to think if it's a dense, high-rise apartment building, when we're even already talking about doing a condo conversion in the future, that concerns me. If it's something we're already saying, maybe we'll need to do a condo conversion on it, I think we need to just think it through really carefully and make sure this is the absolute right, best project, whatever it ends up being.
Very good. All right. Anybody else? Well, Mr. Cross and Holly, you've got a task ahead of you, and
We'll try to digest all of this.
We appreciate not only listening to us. Earlier, many of the landlords and business owners were actually meeting with the Cross team here as well, which was great. I think great input. I only sat in for a few minutes, but it was good to hear the landlord's perspective and the business owner's perspective, because at the end of the day, they got to fill the theaters, they got to fill the restaurants, they got to pay the bills too, because we want to see them be viable too. So I appreciate you listening to not only us, but also them, because at the end of the day, Mr. Cross, what I heard from you in that meeting was that you're going to be very blunt with us as to what our options are. And I know you're very high respected in your industry, on the private side as well as on the public side. And we do appreciate that, because we definitely want to do something that's viable, want to do something that fits the community, and we want success for our downtown. So we appreciate you coming out and listening to us today, so.
Thank you. And we also want to encourage any of you who have additional comments or questions, please direct them. You can direct them to me. Mike Coppin has our email address. Be more than happy to take those, so please don't hesitate. Something didn't get addressed tonight that you want to bring up.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hearing, we do have a public forum on the agenda for tonight. Would anybody like to speak for public forum? Anybody sign up for public forum, Clerk Council?
Mr. Mayor, we didn't have anyone sign in, but
I would take input if anybody would like to raise a hand and speak for 3 minutes. I'd be happy to open that up. Anybody at this time would like to speak for public forum? Okay, hearing none, I'd ask for a motion to adjourn. Alderman York with a motion, Alderman Morley with a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. We are adjourned.